Mark Steele at the Secret Recording. Well,
okay, Mark. There's another guy I know from. You come from up north, don't you?
yeah,
That's north of Manchester.
yes. Just
That means it's up north.
up north, definitely.
It's not north of Watford. It's north of Manchester.
Definitely north of.
And you've got Norwegian connections because you say boat instead of boat.
Boat, though ye. It's mainly English.
Yes.
As well, Shakespearean
Yes.
words would have it. We
Yes.
were. I went to Henry V.
Yeah.
Fantastic Shakespeare, and we were told by our teacher, so obviously wasn't from the northeast.
So you were learnt.
We were told that would have difficulty grasping the language, and so I was amazed when I didn't find any difficulty at all.
There's meant to be
grasping the
thousands of
language.
words, but about 30% of the English language is actually Norwegian or the same.
Yeah. Well, it went all the way down to York, didn't it? When they populated all the way down to York, so it was.
Well, okay. I'm an engineer, so I understand what a volt is.
Yes.
Although I don't know if the Institute of Electrical Engineers understands what a volt is. You're talking about weaponized full spectrum energy weapons.
well, not really.
Now, what do you call by full spectrum?
I think we're talking about optical radiation there, which is another part of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So spectrum's full spectrum, just anything that's across the EMF spectrum. It depends, because obviously that's a very, very, very large subject. If you want to pull it down to some parts of the spectrum, I know quite a bit about the terahertz range. I know quite a bit about the megahertz range. But the thing we're talking about in this particular conference is 5G.
Yeah. Well, I made a video a long time ago in Hounslow, because I used to live in Hounslow, and 6, 7 or 8 years, it was 2018 now, it would have been 2009 possibly. They converted to LED lights, and there's another lady I knew called Dr. Rowney Kilda, and she died quite recently, a couple of years ago, but she was talking 15, 20 years ago about mind control, and she pioneered that. She was former chief medical officer of Finland, and she lived in Norway, and she noticed she lost the power of her legs because 2 sets of LED lights were slightly out of sequence, and it locked out her ability of her brain to actually control her legs, and she had to physically crawl along the ground until she was out of range of both of these lights, and then she could use her legs again.
Yeah. All doable, yeah.
Now the whole point about this is this thing called Li-Fi.
To be honest, I don't know a great deal about it, but what I will most certainly say, light has higher energy values in the photon. So therefore, I would really like to see the technicalities, because I haven't seen it. I've never seen it. I mean, I know quite a lot.
This is basically Li-Fi replacing Wi-Fi, or it's transmitting multi-frequency technology signals which can go straight into the visual cortex into the brain.
Exactly. So it obviously it begs the question: is it safe? Well, considering we now know that microwave radiation is not safe.
Well, it fried cows. That's why we use microwaves.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why we use microwaves is because they discovered all these dead cows in the field.
Because it cooks meat.
Because it cooks meat. So there's no problem replacing that with 5G, which will use much higher frequencies.
Yes.
With more energy.
More energy.
And there's definitely going to be no problem there. You're just going to have cooked humans.
Exactly.
But then maybe they don't want humans around anymore.
From a business perspective, from a capitalist perspective, really, really bad idea. I wouldn't know.
Right. Who are you? Your background, defence stuff. We've had a bit of banter there. You've spoken at AV, we're in Secret Garden, AV9.
Yeah.
And you've also been in the Richie Allen show.
Yeah.
And you're on a show talking about 5G, which is actively in progress in where?
All over the country.
Right.
Many local authorities have it. It's masquerading as a control management system. The hardware, the design of the antennas, all basically for 5G. 5G spectrum it's operating at, and that's in and around the 800 megahertz range. So you hear, let us define 5G for everybody first, because there's a lot of confusion, and the mainstream media want to tell you it's all about higher frequencies. It is, but that's not what it's all about.
We're talking about bringing 1G, 2G, 3, whole lot.
It started off with 1G, 2G, 3G. 5G means more. It means more of that, as well as, so multiple devices. Let's say I had, as gated have, they put 31,875 transmitters on every single LED street light. That's 5G. The number's 5G. Even though
you're talking every single street light.
every single street light has what the council have said is a control management system on. It's not a control management system, and the reason why all the lights are on. So the lights are on intermittently because they've rushed this technology out because it's 5G. It actually operates on the 5G spectrum, which is in around the 800 megahertz part of the spectrum. We're not talking about pulse rated devices here. So there is some confusion.
Use every technical term you've got.
Yeah, it's all about the spec. Well, like I said, 5G is a lot of many things. What it most certainly isn't just about these higher frequency phased rate antenna and the signals that can be used from that to either 3D map your home or attack you in your bed when you're asleep. So 5G is more of. And we already have the epidemiological data to show that the 2G, 3G, 4G experiment hasn't went very well, because obviously we've got significant increases in neurological disorders, we've got significant increases, and one of the things that's quite poignant here, the damage to military personnel. Military personnel have brain injury. If we were to scan them, obviously all the psychological trauma that they're suffering is mainly due to battlefield interrogation equipment. And this battlefield interrogation equipment, which is basically to interrogate the battlefield, is coming to a street near you in the very near future. And obviously some people already have it, they just don't know they have it. Some councils have rolled it out, they don't know really what it is. I mean, we had one character from Gateshead Council, head of their comms team, that said you can buy this equipment in B&Q. Well, he most certainly can't buy it in B&Q. He actually said it on BBC too, on Jeremy Vine. I mean, absolutely, you know, it beggars belief how they can, where they get these people from that just actually don't understand what's going on. 5G is everywhere. Common purpose, ignorance, just sheer ignorance. And it's because they're hanging on to the narrative for these very high frequency waveforms, and they're saying, well, it's not here. Well, guess what? 5G is not about that. 5G is just part of that. It's a very small part. It's the bit at the end that will most certainly cause us more problems. But the actual increase, the ubiquitous increase of these transmitters is going to basically cause an annihilation event. It will kill everything. It's already killing everything.
How does it do that? Dr. Graham Downing expressed the idea that it will destroy the ability of mitochondrial DNA sections of each cell.
Yes.
And kill that. Basically, it will kill all corporeal life.
My expertise is not in that realm. So what I always do, I'll reference Professor Martin L. Pal. Martin shows.
Give as many references.
Yeah, well, Martin in his work, he's basically got his finger on the button there. He actually shows the non-thermal impact from these type of transmitters, how they actually cause the neurological disorders, and what you have to always take into consideration. His science now has been substantiated by the epidemiological data. I think the NHS, it was reported that their bill for mental health last year was 90 billion. We have a 38% increase up to 2014 of young women suffering from strokes, and in the same geolocations we have a 15% increase in young men. So consequently, that tells me body density. We know that part of the fix in microwave radiation is body density, and the reason why these transmitters, when they were tested under the international regulatory guidelines, no standards guidelines here, their exposure was exposure to 200-pound males. So the basis of the safety regulations, not regulations, I said that, that's a mistake, the guidelines, I do make those mistakes because anybody that knows about product development design, we all have a body of standards that we adhere to.
And you're saying those standards have been violated?
Totally, absolutely, 100%. Well, one of the things which is really interesting under international laws, when there's a confusion about technology, when there's any controversy, you have to apply the precautionary principle, which is a LARA, as low as reasonably achievable. So we know that, nobody's saying that you can totally get away from telecoms and telecom systems. However, I remember after the, well, I don't remember personally after the war, but I know people who were alive just after the war. The GPU put a lot of poles up around the country, and they ran telecoms through cables. And we had Rediffusion, which was a cable TV system. We had cable TV. And what's actually happened, we went to a very lazy, sloppy, stick a transmitter up, save a few bob, fire a signal over there, and without any due care to the impact, the detrimental economic impact, and I'll cover that because it's really important. This isn't just a humanitarian crime. It's a crime on the economy. It's criminal activity. It's laziness. It's to try and save a few bob and not make any money, because obviously if you make everybody ill, you put them in hospital. If you're sitting in a hospital bed and you're suffering from a stroke, you're not spending any money. And if you're suffering neurological disorders, you're not out and about happy and bubbly. You don't want to buy a new car either. So this is a significant impact. In fact, I class it as economic terrorism. Most certainly economic terrorism. It's humanitarian terrorism, and it's an environmental terrorist attack, because we've seen a total collapse in flying insect populations. The transmitter on the light in Gateshead, 25 milliwatt. The exposure, I can expose a £200 male, maximum 1. So we've got 25 times the capacity of radiation emitted from that transmitter. Any small flying insect that's attracted to LED street lighting, as they are, will be annihilated. And to put that into an analogy, I spoke at a conference in Europe, and a scientist said to me, we need to do some research on this. We really do need to do some research. And I said, well, you don't really need to do some research, and I'll give you an analogy. If I hit you on the hand with a 2.5 pound mash hammer, I think we can roughly work out what's going to happen. And he said, and I said, so you understand that analogy? And he said, yeah, I do. I says, I mean, obviously I'll carry out the experiment if you want to. You may not like the result, but we'll do the research if you want to do the research. And that, you know, those sort of statements by people who educated people in particular, who, you know, I mean, the guy wasn't trying to be funny. What he was actually saying is, let's delay this for a few years. Well, we haven't got time to delay this. This is an absolute ecological catastrophe, and it's an attack on business. It's an attack on everybody. And any GCHQ, any spy agencies, any police out there, you're out of a job. When 5G is fully operational, you can be imprisoned in your own home. There's no need for prisons.
This is something which a patent attorney mentioned. I did the BASIS project, going back to BASIS 2. I interviewed a patent attorney who worked at Harwell, rather than Appleton Labs. He was there to deal with the patent issues. And he explained that we have lost control of ourselves. He was aware of other issues there. And from the historical point of view, they were making aliens in bases in that area, and that was the civilian scientific entrance to that. In other words, they looked like aliens because the movies told us, but they were genetic modifications of
humans.
And that was a Nazi thing that's going on in German areas. So the logical to this is that if we use this technology, it'll destroy cells, so economic terrorism is irrelevant because there's not going to be anybody around
To buy, exactly.
to buy the stuff. What's your alarm bells and all this?
Massive.
We're all going to die.
Big rig, yeah. Well,
I mean, I'm familiar with Elon Musk.
I think, I'm not saying everyone will die, and I am familiar with Elon Musk.
Slow and painful death.
Yeah,
it costs
well,
lots of money and healthcare.
The 25 milliwatt transmitter it's 307 electron volts at a square meter. So you're basically charging air. You charge air roughly around about 34. So you've got a 30. So you're charging air particles. You breathe in positively charged air, and you will increase oxidative stress in the breathing passages. Now, I know that the Nazis, they had this humanitarian idea about using Zyklon B. Humanitarian from the perspective that it kills people quickly. Obviously, a lot of people will disagree completely with that idea.
What's Zyklon B?
Zyklon B was used to gas people in the concentration camps, but obviously they thought that was humanitarian. I mean, you couldn't get further away from that. However, gassing people with charged air will cause very, very slow, painful death. I mean, I don't know, there'll be people there who...
people know that from air conditioning. They need negative ions.
And negative ions,
in the background here, and you see the garden gives you a refreshing, happy feeling.
Happy feeling,
and things work better.
Yes.
But if you're going to charge people with positive things, you're by definition going to clog up.
It's mainly damaging. Positive charge there is mainly harmful, in total opposite to negatively charged there. So you're positively charging here with billions. The idea is to have billions of these transmitters, billions and billions of RFID tags. These are radio frequency identity tags.
Which are then energized with that.
Energized by it, and every single one that's in your packaging. So they're going to put this in your tin cans, they're going to put this in your Weetabix box, so when you're finished with the product, so they know exactly how much you're using, what you're consuming. There'll be no real economy, it'll be a totally false economy, and whatever you consume, they'll know about it. Whatever you get rid of, they'll know about it, and consequently that will increase the radiation impact from the transmitters that they've just put outside your bedroom window that are a classified carcinogen and will increase your risk of brain cancer. So they put a brain cancer transmitter outside people's bedroom windows. They fitted them to an LED streetlight that will increase your cancer risk significantly, because obviously some of those frequencies of light in the 450 nanometers range, and
that's the point about LEDs.
LEDs.
So they use them off fiber optics and things.
They're more dangerous.
Extremely high frequency.
Anybody that puts an IoT system that can control a light system where you can pulse modulate the light and basically weaponize it, I believe it's treason. Why would anyone put a weapon system that has a platform that can be compromised into a street near you? Is that for me? It's a weapon, and it's most certainly a weapon.
Now the higher frequencies ones, it means an aerosol can block the frequency. So
yes,
trees. I noticed lots of trees being cut down where I live in devices.
Yeah.
And what you mentioned, I think yesterday, or maybe Dr. Graham Downing mentioned that they would treat large trees like shrubs and cut them down.
Yeah.
So they're stumped almost, just like a set of fingers in the air,
yeah.
and then they die.
And then they die, and then you cut them out. Yeah.
And there's an agenda for that.
I don't know if there's agenda. I think it might. I've met some of these people, and really they're pretty dim. I'm not saying that there isn't an agenda. And
useful idiot.
Yeah, useful idiots. Absolutely useful idiots. In Gateshead alone, Gateshead Council put out a press release, and their comms people put this press release calling anybody who had anything to do with the Save Us Now party were conspiracy theorists. It wasn't 5G. The World Health Organization said that it's not dangerous. They said no risk. They have quoted the World Health Organization saying there's no risk.
Well, they said that about swine flu, and
yeah.
two of the directors of the company supplying the swine flu material, I think it was Tamiflu, were actually connected with the people making the decision.
Well, they quoted Protection Health England saying there was no risk. Protection Health England have said nothing of the sort. The World Health Organization have said nothing of the sort. In fact, they have stated there is a risk, a significant risk to health, to human health.
But I'm sure that our mainstream media journalists would, of course, check those factual information.
Well, it was an anonymous press release. It was an attack on a political party. Save Us Now is a political party. It was an attack by the authority in that area against the political party, which is in breach of parliamentary laws. So their communication systems not only lied in this press release, the local papers, the local BBC reported this as factual when there's absolutely not a shred of evidence. In fact, it was a downright deliberate attack and a lie, a total fabricated lie, an anonymous lie.
Now, getting on to, I'll have to, these cameras have to have a little break, maybe 20 odd minutes, battery low on that, that's good. Okay, we just continue, we just run. Okay, these autonomous cars, self-driving cars, and the amount of radiation they emit to see where they're going and make sure they don't run into people. What about that?
It's, well...
You have thousands of them going down Oxford Street, you mentioned.
Well, I think the Department of Transport most certainly don't want to just have one. They're talking about quite a few. Obviously, each platform emits significant amounts of radiation, especially from the phased array antenna and radar.
Are these the current models, or will the main production models of these cars, what will they be doing?
I think technology will become more and more sophisticated, but obviously anything that interrogates its environment, the battlefield interrogation equipment, we already have evidence of the significant increase in neurological harm to veterans. So what I'm suggesting is that if the more of these signal systems come onto the roads of the UK, the more neurological disorders. I mean, imagine Oxford Street with 50 or 60 of these vehicles.
Well, assume we're going to be replacing virtually all cars with these things.
The toxicity levels on roads would be so much so that you wouldn't actually be able to travel on the road.
That's to say, you wouldn't be able to travel on the road
Humans
unless you're in a car.
No, I don't think well, no, because the radar travels directly through. You would get some protection, but it would probably mean a whole redesign of the vehicles. Obviously, LiDAR Class 1 laser. If I shone a Class 1 laser at your eye, it's classed as assault. You've got them on the top of these autonomous vehicles currently, and the real danger is then part of the frequency where you can't visualise them. So consequently, you'd probably get home, you'd have very tired, sore eyes, you'd be driving, you might have one of these things up behind you. You've got 3 mirrors in your car which is directing that radiation from the laser that you can't see directly at your head and your eyesight. This is assault. That is actually assault.
Bumblebee there, do you think I like the lines going on?
Yeah. It's amazing how we don't see any honeybees. You see the bumblebees, but no honeybees.
I see little tiny hovering ones.
Yeah, it's more. I think it's more of a type of fly.
Ah, yeah. Let's stop that one. Right. And I'll do this. This is Mark. What's
Steele.
Mark Steele.
Mark Steele. Part 2.
Part 2 in the Secret Garden.
Yeah.
Right, we're talking about these cars full of multi-frequency sensing devices, so they know where they're going, because they're taking over from people who won't know where they're going, because the logic to this is that it's hurting human flesh, it's blinding us, it's burning our brains out. It would infer, based on other agendas like Agenda 21 and the 2045 agenda to transfer human consciousness, and the BT, we're in the BT training school, former BT training school, with Project Soul Catcher.
Yeah.
The agenda is, within a short period of time, next 20 years or less, is to take, we also talked at the conference at AV9 that we're at, is where pigs' brains were kept working outside the body.
Yeah.
The logic to that is they're going to put human brains into some kind of cyborg, and that will need all this technology to find out where the hell they're going.
Yeah.
So that would, the logic to this is that there's an agenda to remove all living people and all living corporeal flesh from the surface of the planet.
Yeah.
This stuff hits the oxygen molecule and converts to the ozone, which is toxic. It will reduce normal oxygen levels. So we're looking at a desert planet run by cyborgs here within years. Is that the logic to this?
If we carry on this path,
perspective and a weapons grade perspective.
yeah, if we carry on this path, which I'm hoping the 5G's overstepped the mark because the technology's not ready, and it's making people sick. So its weaponisation's not exactly in full play. Consequently, and people have noticed that all of the living things around them are suffering. Your dogs are losing hair. Your dogs suffer neurological disorders. I mean, my dog started having panic attacks. The cats, the birds, everything's impacted. People are being impacted, and this is a wake-up call for humanity. To actually take a serious look at this and see the path that we're on, and we have to jump out of the boiling frog experiment.
Yeah, the boiling frog. Yeah, excellent thing here. Now, what do you think the solutions are? What is your aim here? And how do we action a solution?
Political through the ballot paper. They're absolutely terrified. They're terrified.
But the ballot paper's rigged to hell.
It is rigged. That's why you need a absolutely new party. It needs to be set up. You need organisations where there are chapters of Save Us Now. Save Us Now, it has all the correct symbology to tell the people that use that symbology that we're here to make a difference.
Now, the thing is, surely you're going to talk revolution here, which is, I'm not saying you are, but all the people in security services who are in Cheltenham and all the police and all those people who are clearly the people who are going to action this, stop you from doing this, You're saying they're all out of a job.
They're all out of a job.
Would
5G.
that somehow give them some kind of incentive?
Well, that's why what we don't want is revolution, and that's why we're giving
You
people.
just go back to the
what we're going to do. We're going to redress the issues. We're going to bring back the rule of law. The laws most certainly have been broken at every single level. Gated Council, for instance, they carried out this multi-million-pound rollout under parliamentary laws. They are obliged to do full public consultation. There was none. There was no health impact analysis. There was no environmental impact analysis.
Well, in many respects, a lot of the so-called impact analysis that these people have been doing have effectively just been a farce.
It's a farce, but they're still obliged. They're still obliged under UK parliamentary law. They have to. This contract of this size, multi-million-pound contract, they are obliged through open democracy. They have to carry out a public consultation. The first we knew of it, they were in the street, and I believe the total reason why they didn't carry out any of the obligatory rules laid down by Parliament was because they knew that the whole thing would fail. So consequently,
just get it in and
just get it in. And the reason for the get it in, the NTP study shows that this is in fact a class 1 cancer causing radiation and not the 2B as it had been classified in 2010 by the World Health Organization.
So what has been classified and what has not been classified, and who's classified it, and what who are these people that we needed?
Well, the WHO classified non-ionising radiation as a 2B, so it's in the same classification as formaldehyde, lead, all problematic things. So you know, it's an issue, and obviously what should have really happened was should have actually from 2010 on over. As the Council of Europe, the 1815 resolution, Council of Europe has basically told Western democracies to stop increasing the impact from these microwave radiation signals to their populations. Now that's the international courts. Obviously, governments aren't listening. They're just basically.
Are they paid not to listen, or are they technologically incompetent?
Incompetent.
The people who should be. My argument here is that the people who should be really helping us here or guarding us here are the Institute of Electrical Engineers
yes.
and the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers.
Yes.
And they are failing us on every level.
Well, it's
on
why
a lot of these technologies.
They are, and the FCC is trying to roll it out
and
as quickly
Ofcom
as
in this country totally failing us
yeah.
and misinforming us and not allowing us to get proper alternate news.
Yeah.
We've had other alternate news stations try to start up and being shut down by, shall we say, burdening them with the inability to
get the
function.
story.
How do you address the powers that be and the institutes concerned with these, which they should be safeguarding the public? How do you talk to those people?
They'll use the law. Apply the law. Apply the law.
These are very important people, very very influential. Lots of backdoor pressure, lots of strings to be pulled so you can get away with it.
Yeah, hold them personally accountable through this in-power movement and use the rule of law. And that's the reason for the party. What we most certainly don't want is revolution. I think when the people find out what's really happened, they may want to take revolution. That never plays in anybody's favour, you know. What we really want to do is get people behind the Save Us Now movement. That Save Us Now movement will change because it's all the clean skins. I'm a technological advisor to this party. The party's not me. You know, it's got nothing really to do with me, just the fact that I've brought this to their attention so that we can take this fight where it needs to be. You have to remember, freedom of information requests to gated council are obliged under parliamentary law to respond. They haven't. The local MPs in the area aren't responding to their voters. A lot of voters are contacting these local MPs, telling them that they're sick, they're ill, they're suffering neurological disorders, nosebleeds in children, miscarriage in women. They're ignoring them, they're ignoring their own electorate.
What are the medical profession doing about this? Are the medical profession aware of where these things are caused?
The medical profession, there's a few, very small few, who have recognised this as being a serious issue. However, the vast majority of the medical community, they're basically chemists. They don't understand science. They don't understand the mechanism of how this type of microwave radiation, and that's why I implore everybody, look at Martin Powell's work, look at Ollie Johansson's work, look at Professor Deborah Davis, Professor Martin Blank. I mean, there's reams of these people, all academics, well qualified.
Where people could look this up with these sort of details.
Yeah, there's the Save Us Now website. It's Save Us Now, all one word. It's .org.uk. You have Environmental Health Trust in the USA. Very interesting. Lots and lots of relevant information there for people to get on board with. And obviously there's your own research. Like I said, I implore everyone, do your own research. Don't take my word for it, because that's even more powerful. Because once you start to dig down and start travelling down that rabbit hole, you'll find that, it's a little bit more interesting what I'm talking about
well,
today.
I interviewed a guy called Gabe Cruz, who was a cell phone tower designer, installed the analog system in the Pacific Northwest. And then he went from project installation. He decided the towers go here, and he built them and charged projects. And then he stayed on, and then he had 800 megs. Then it went digital. Then it went all the way up their frequencies. And he started discovering that the mix of these frequencies, and the signals as they mix in the atmosphere, are causing serious problems. And then he started getting targeted.
Yeah. It's what I call it overburden. We've got a totally these guidelines. It's like the Wild West. The Wild West, where all of your current regulatory standards, the law, everything's just been put on a massive bond. I mean, we have to remember we've got thousands of years, in the last couple of 100 years, of regulation and standards and laws. Every single thing that's been written down, every judgment is totally been put on a bonfire and set on fire, because these technologies operate totally outside of the law, operate outside of the regulatory standards. Everything that we know about them is harming humans. It's a humanitarian crime. We have a humanitarian crime going on of biblical proportions, and the mainstream media, they're complicit in the acquiescence of not giving out the right information. I mean, the BBC are an absolute disgrace. BBC put an article up the other day. It's on YouTube. Everybody can go and have a look at it. It's about 5G rollout in Southampton. Every single comment, or near every, at least 10 out of one comment on there is all extremely negative. You'd think the BBC would pick up on that. It's their YouTube channel, and there's people posting stuff like, oh, so we're all going to get cancer, oh, so we're all going to die. 5G will kill absolutely everything. It's not fully operational, and the latency from the impact of this radiation could be 10, 15, 20, 30 years out, so we will not see what the full impact of this the administration of a noxious substance. And anyone that tells me that non-ionizing radiation is not dangerous, go and have a look at weapon systems.
Well, what about the weapon systems?
Weapon systems is the focusing of these type of radiation signals. So where you focus, where you collimate, and it can range in a lot of different, whether it's to subdue, whether it's to attack, a bit like lasers. We see a lot of the military using lasers to bring down missiles, etc. That's non-ionizing radiation, by the way. This is the thing that you get some educated fools will tell you it doesn't have enough energy in it to do you harm. But so you only have to take a look, pull the curtains back, take a look, and do your own research. It's all there. In fact, there was a GIC report, US, I think in 2011, about the increase of radio frequency systems and how they can be extremely problematic and weaponized. Go and dig this stuff out. Do your own research.
Well, what brought you to tell us this? I mean, what made you unique in other people in the field? You must see this coming.
Yeah. Well, in my near locality, the local authority rolled this absolutely devastating neural phased array network out in Gateshead.
What would, to the general public, what is a phased array network?
Phased array is where you offstep.
What could they see that? Where could they notice?
Just have a look on the internet. Go and research on YouTube what phased array means, and you'll see it's a bank of antenna. So obviously we've got 31,875 of these antenna.
where are these? What would they see them as?
It's just a small twig, and obviously in the gated area, it's pretty. It's
It's only about that size of fingers.
yeah, it's about the size of your finger. I had a guy said to me, he said, "Well, that doesn't look very dangerous." I says, "Have you seen how big a 9mm bullet is? They're pretty dangerous." So they, you know, and if you
But
understand,
if you saw that in an LED light or something, I mean, what would members of the general? I mean, there's fear, and there's what we can do about it, fear, and there's what we can't do anything about it, fear. What can people apply? I mean, people have been complaining about cell phone towers, about Tetra, and all this sort of stuff. Maybe that's been a bit of a dry run.
it's a dry run. Yeah,
And they've all been basically told where to go.
yeah. Well, it's about time that. Inaction, you lose everything. You lose your family, your pets, everything you love.
But the people who are going to be in charge of instrumenting this stuff and sending us to jail because there'll be nasty people writing nasty letters to our MP too many times, they're finished.
They're first to go. They're first to go. If I was to implement a full, well, 5G is fully operational. You can imprison people in their homes. You will not need any police to do any investigatory work. You will most certainly not need GCHQ. And obviously, there's no way the people that, the EI system or the people that are behind the rollout of 5G, there's absolutely no way they're going to have a load of people costing the economy with for no particular reason. So they'll be the first target.
I mean, one of the things that people think is that there's a lot of people looking at monitors and they're saying, that person's walked over to there and they're going over here. This is all held off to data mining in AI.
Well, it's all about data. It's about these things were developed for data gathering, for battlefield interrogation, and it may just have been an accident that somebody thought was a great idea to build a factory to make a load of battlefield equipment, and then thought, hang on a minute, we're not making a lot of battlefield equipment now, let's put it in a car, let's put it on somebody's street light, let's put it somewhere else and make some more money. So it could just be the fact that somebody hasn't worked out that that's extremely dangerous. And
I never realised, I never thought a weapon would somehow be dangerous, so maybe I'm misconstruing what a weapon does in a battlefield. So, in a nutshell, what can people do about this?
talk, text, tell. Don't use the battle space of the internet. Do use it, but only use it to a certain degree because it's there to subdue. The LED screens can make you feel as if you're on your own. They can also dissuade you from thinking the right things, looking for the right things.
You're
so,
talking about the actual computer screen that people are looking at.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a weapon system. It's a phased array of LEDs.
Well, you've got a load of LEDs which you can pulse modulate the light at people in certain ways to make them. It's the same as when you see a nice shape. And
You're talking about a one or something?
Well, just a nice shape. That's just light entering your eye. So it's pretty straightforward how you can manipulate that light in a certain way to either attract you or to repel you, which is very powerful from a manufacturing perspective. Let's say you had a very, very famous telecoms company that had let's say a very good product, and I started to pulse the adverts in a certain way that would make people not really like that particular product. It's pretty powerful stuff.
Well, one of the things about the Basis project is that we discovered they were knocking off greys down in Peasmore in a base. And one of my colleagues noticed that there was a lot of hostile toxic frequencies and energies of some kind coming into the electricity system.
Yeah.
And one of the ways about these LED lights is you put a lot of frequencies and pulses onto ordinary electrical power, that'll start coming out on the LEDs.
Yeah, yeah.
So you could actually do something. So what they did was that they blocked this stuff coming into the house, and then they had a great idea. Right, why don't we go around the local substation and block it there? They got a visit from these greys, and they were told you can defend your own house, but you leave the substations alone. Now, these greys may have been made by HMG under license from USG. They may not have been so-called AV, but the substations are therefore able to transmit these frequencies into the LED street system and subdue a whole town or a particular area.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I made a video about that 10 years ago.
LED
street light.
Anybody that attaches any sort of IoT to an LED streetlight, you're basically weaponising it, because you can use it to subdue, You can pulse modulate the light to have people take fits. I mean, imagine let's have a scenario here where a lot of people on a motorway in vehicles. You start to pulse the light. Probably 30% you could probably have a fit. Yeah. So having a fit when you're driving a car might be the reason for the autonomous vehicles, but your reason for the total misinformation about automation and autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles and the radiation that they currently emit would be so toxic in number that biological structures wouldn't be able to drive a car. Or you'd have to redesign the whole vehicle so you wouldn't be able to see out, because glass isn't very good. I mean, you can attenuate this radiation, but that would then necessitate a whole redesign of vehicles.
See through it then.
Yeah,
seeing through it is a good idea if you want to have a windscreen to drive in a car.
Just a bit.
This is all very serious.
Oh, it's
and
really
it's happening
serious.
Fast.
It's happening very fast, and it's very serious. And you know, I like to have a bit of a laugh about it, because obviously it's part of being a human, having a bit of fun. What we don't want to do is depress everybody to death. So,
well, there's that.
Yeah.
Well, we've run out of power on one camera already, so we'll just sort of nail it in a quick sort of 1, 2, 3. What's your 1, 2, 3, and how do people get in contact with you? Just a 1, 2, 3, bang, bang, bang.
Contact Save Us Now. Set up your own chapters. Talk to people in your near locality. Even people if you think they're the enemy. The way the system will be run, the chapters will make sure there's nobody going to be the enemy here. I can tell you now.
If you're a living being,
you're on side. If you're a living human being, you're on side. And what we're going to do, Save Us Now, is going to take the country out of the hands of these criminals. Because what's actually happened up there now is a crime.
So if they're not human, how are you going to deal with them?
Well, there's enough humans to deal with them.
I mean, your colleague, town from up north, John Irwin, he ran a military team, 1957, he was in there, 1957-59, he discovered artefacts and data banks which referring to Nephilim, which masked themselves as humans and all that sort of stuff, ancient stuff. I mean, he was, whatever they knew then, they certainly knew about something which wasn't one of us.
Well, you know, whatever they had then, they're not deploying it until now. And that's if it is.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons he wrote this book, The 16. Do you have any literature yourself written? Have you got anything? Any books?
Have I written? No.
Books takes too long.
No, we haven't got time.
How long have you been doing this?
This all came to my attention in about more in around about the 2013-ish time.
Yeah.
Where we started looking at technologies. I had some intellectual property patents. I write patents. I'm an inventor, businessman, and I had written a number of patents for some really interesting stuff, and I thought had some fantastic value. That business came under attack from one of the largest technology companies in the world, and that then gave me the time to start looking at other technologies, other head-up display systems businesses and technologies, and I started to see some very, very worrisome technologies that hadn't been risk assessed, as you're obliged to. I mean, you cannot make products that make people sick. And I started looking into this whole thing, and I bumped into a few scientists, the one guy in particular in the US, who was very, very concerned about microwave radiation and signals from antennas. And that sparked the whole look-see into that, and obviously some of the earlier work I carried out sort of tied into...
okay, I'm just going